see it in a second. This is Greg Study on soccer. You know, guys, I'm here with Tony Donatelli, and this is really a fun day for me because I don't get a chance to get to know a lot of the guys on the East Coast, and play with the teams on the East Coast. I absolutely see a lot of the players and principals from the West. But thank you very much, Tony, for joining me today. Baltimore Blast midfielder Tony Donatelli, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Greg. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of go through your story. I mean, your soccer journey, and let the people know that don't already know some of the interesting, ways that you got going, where you got going from, and places you played, and maybe a couple of stories along the way if you've got a couple to share with us. The beginning of this whole thing is that you got started kicking in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Now, as I understand it, Glenside, Pennsylvania is where you were born. Did you grow up there?
Yeah, grew up there. My parents are still living in the same house I was born in up to like 2 years ago. So still have a lot of family in the area.
Wow, that's exciting. I have a similar story. When I was like 5 years old, we moved to a house. My mom and dad, they're in their middle 80s and they're still around, and they live in the same house as well. So that's pretty fun to have that kind of history. Glenside, Pennsylvania is right outside of Philadelphia. Is that correct?
Yeah, just north and west suburb of Philadelphia.
So the thing that's interesting, Tony, about this, and I think from the West Coast, it's kind of fun to sort of get a perspective of geography. Philadelphia is like right between New York City and Baltimore. Is that right?
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours in both directions. Yeah.
And then if you go like due west, about the same distance is Harrisburg.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because from my perspective, that's kind of like driving from San Diego to Los Angeles, So I mean, it's the same distance, same amount of time, and I think a lot of people on the West Coast, or maybe even in the center country, don't really get a perspective of how close some of the major cities and population centers on the East Coast are.
Absolutely. No, it was a great place to grow up, Philadelphia. Obviously, we took weekend trips to New York City, down here to Baltimore. Maybe not so much to Harrisburg, but been there a lot in the last 10 years. But yeah, it was a great place. Having big cities like that so close by to experience, different cities and different cultures just in such a small area was really cool.
Well, one of the things, also, again, coming from the West Coast, when we travel to the East Coast, the West Coast doesn't have the same kind of history. I mean, we have some Spanish history. We have, like in California, we've got the missions, the old missions that the Spanish built in the 1700s and that kind of thing. But we don't have American history in the same way that you find on the East Coast. And I've been to Philadelphia, and I mean, I did the tourist thing. I went to Independence Hall and I saw the Liberty Bell and that kind of thing. And it's just a great cultural place to visit all around. I mean, Washington D.C. is incredibly wild, and New York City is its own place, and of course Baltimore and its waterfront are fun. But it's just an incredibly interesting place for people from outside to come and visit. I think everybody needs to come and see that part of the country.
No, absolutely. Obviously being here, I'm a little biased, but I love it here. I still brought my kids up to see Independence Hall last year, so get that little history.
Nice.
We love going to Fort McHenry in Baltimore, so there's a
Nice.
lot of history in such a close proximity. And so it's obviously, like I said, a really cool place to experience and to grow up in.
Yeah, and you didn't go far away. So let's talk about your growing up. When did you start playing soccer? I understand you started playing soccer pretty young for the Hunter Soccer Club.
That's correct. Yeah, so I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than me. My dad played soccer growing up, so people that I was born with a soccer ball in my foot. I think I first started playing like organized probably when I was 4. I was playing with my brother's team when I was probably 3, just messing around. So I've been in the game a long time and fell in love early. But yeah, Hunter Soccer was my first club. Played there for 10 years and really was my kickstart of my career there.
And that's fun because I mean, when you're with an organization that long, you get the whole thing of starting at the bottom and working your way up to the higher levels, and you get the feel for how that club organization kind of concept works. How were you? Did you play in high school as well?
Yeah, so I went to Germantown Academy, a private school right outside of Philadelphia. We had a really good team my senior year, my junior year. When I went there, they weren't known for their soccer program, really big swimming program, some Olympian swimmers, really good basketball team. The soccer team hadn't won a conference title in like 32 years or something crazy like that. And my freshman year there, we brought in like 8 freshmen that were all really good players. Ended up being like I think all 8 Division I college players. So by our senior year, we were like top 5 in the country, really good, won the conference championship. So a really good experience there for sure.
Okay, so you're saying because we're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail as we go, but you're saying you won a high school championship, state championship?
Well, we were private, so at that time we weren't able to play in the state championships, but we ended up beating the state champion 3-0 that year. So,
that's substantial.
Yeah,
I think
so maybe
that's
we would have been. Yeah,
maybe you were the better side.
I think so.
And you went to college at Temple University. So Temple University is still in the same neighborhood, isn't it? It's inside Philadelphia. It's nearby Philadelphia.
Yes, it's right down Center City, Philly, about 30 minutes from where I grew up. Funny story is my club soccer coach when I was my last couple of years in high school ended up becoming the Temple head coach. So
wow,
yeah, he played at Baltimore Blasters in the Hall of Fame. Dave McWilliams, fantastic indoor player. And so that was a connection there, and made it really easy to transition into the college game and into Temple. So to have that familiarity going into it was big for me.
But you weren't just playing for Temple at the time. Were you also not going down to Ocean City and playing for a team down in Ocean City at the same time?
I was, yeah. So I think it was in the summers of my junior going into my senior year. So 2 years. Ocean City Barons were a PDL team, really good team. Down at the beach, just an hour and a half away from Philadelphia. So a lot of the local players, top college players that were in the area all got together and had a really good experience there. I think we were one of the few PDL teams still to this day that and made some really good friendships and, really catapulted a lot of our professional careers playing there.
And there was so from there, I understand that you were actually drafted out of college by the Houston Dynamo, but that didn't quite work out.
Correct. Yeah. So I was invited to the MLS Combine while I was at Temple. I had a really good combine score to go in one of the games. I was getting interest from a few teams. Got drafted by Houston. Ended up going down there for preseason. I did pretty well. It came down to really myself, and it looked like Stuart Holden was just coming back from England at the time. They decided to go with Stuart, who couldn't really complain at the time. Ended up being a U.S. national team player, played in the Premier League. So they may have made the right decision on that. But it was a good experience. It showed me, what the level needed to be.
Right.
And ended up, finding a new team pretty quickly after.
Well, right. And so then I guess this is your first actual professional contract with the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah. So after the Houston thing didn't work out, I was contacted by Bob Lilly, who was the coach of Vancouver there. He had saw me at the Combine, also was friends with Dave McWilliams. They had played indoor together. I think Bob played at Harrisburg. So they knew each other through that. He contacted me, said he was interested, wanted me to fly out to Vancouver to join the team. And at that point, I didn't know where Vancouver was. Okay. I did look on a map, and it was a long ways from Philadelphia. So ended up doing it. I was a little worried at first, and it was the best decision I ever made. I have some friends that are still to this day friends of mine, and I had a really good team that I was able to break into the lineup and make an impact right from the start.
And this was the first also sort of straight out of college, buddy, and you're getting a championship with the Vancouver Whitecaps. And my understanding is that championship game was against the Rochester Rhinos.
Yeah, so the funny story is in between Houston and Vancouver, I was also talking with Rochester to come up there. They wanted to sign me, but were interested in loaning me down to the USL2, which was not something I was like really wanting at that point. So I ended up going to
Right.
Vancouver, playing Rochester in the final in Rochester, and then ended up winning and scoring a goal in it. So um, it was a good full circle moment there.
Yeah. So the Vancouver Whitecaps, I mean, I'm one of these guys, I started following soccer back in, I think it was 1979, and that was the NASL outdoors. I really wasn't too attached at that time to following the indoor game, even though the MISL had already started. My allegiance and following was the San Diego Sockers, and they weren't playing indoors yet. But whenever I see these legacy brands, I call them legacy brands. The Baltimore Blast are one of them. The Vancouver Whitecaps is another one. I mean, these are brands that have been around for a long time, and it's very cool to see how so many of them in the MASL and also in MLS have maintained the brand. I mean, we all know that a lot of them aren't the same legal entity, but having that brand keep going through lends a real good history to the sport, and lets people have it's one of those things. So it's one of those things with me. It's like, okay, so here's a new fan, and he comes in and he says, well, wait a minute. I mean, I know that this Dallas Sidekicks team started in 20 whatever 50 18 or whatever it was, 2015, whatever it was, in the PASL. But wait a minute, there's banners hanging up in the rafters that are talking about championships from the 1980s and 1990s. So it sort of leads to a question of researching history and getting to know history. I feel the same way about the Ron Newman Cup being called the Ron Newman Cup. Not so much the allegiance to the San Diego Sockers, coach, but more his impact on the indoor game. And it's like, why is it called the Ron Newman Cup? I've been following this league for 10 years and I've never heard of Ron Newman. Who's Ron Newman? Well, go do some research and you get to learn it. And then you get rabbit trails that take people into the history of the sport. And so I think that that's a really important thing with keeping the legacy brands going on. And so from there, you moved over to the Montreal Impact. So now you're back on the East Coast.
Yeah, so I was in Vancouver 2.5 years. Ended up getting traded mid-season of my third year to Montreal. A kid in Montreal, that team was full of Italians, so they welcomed me right in. Italian American, I didn't speak the language, which they were a little upset about, but I really loved my experience in Montreal. Okay. I mean, it's like you're in Europe, and the French language, the history there as well, right. Not only in the city but in the organization. Like you said, like I've been so fortunate to play for some historic and legacy organizations that I've really enjoyed my time with, and obviously here in Baltimore now, but definitely was fortunate to play there and loved every moment. We had some really cool experiences there, winning a championship there, playing in the Champions League. Right. Making it all the way to the quarterfinals. So played some exhibition games against some, AC Milan and River Plate and some really good teams and, lifetime, memories that I experienced there. So, yeah, moving from Vancouver to Montreal, staying in Canada, but, definitely having some new experiences.
That is interesting. I mean, Canada is an interesting country because it does have sort of a dual culture. On the West Coast, it's kind of British. On the East Coast, it's French. So, I mean, historically, so there's that interesting, cultural shift when you go back and forth in Canada. But we skipped over something chronologically because during this time, you're going back and forth playing in Philadelphia for the Philadelphia Kicks indoors. Now, was this the first time that you'd actually played indoors?
No, so growing up in Philadelphia, you get the cold winter. So, we were always playing indoor tournaments, or you even had like an indoor state cup, like the outdoor state cups at the youth level. So, I was always playing the indoor game, but, not as official as a professional level. So it was not completely new to me. Obviously, watching the Philadelphia Kicks growing up on TV, being a huge fan. then being able, actually during my senior year of college, during our winter break, I was able to go in and practice with the team before I was ended up drafted by them. So, I was not as new to the indoor game as, a lot of the people that maybe like the Brazilians that are coming from other countries, although they have a futsal background,
Right.
they're not used to the boards and that kind of stuff. That was something that I was used to
Right.
coming into it. So that really helped, my transition.
And kind of hometown kid making good, isn't it? I mean, there you are. This is where you grew up. This is your hometown team, and now you get to play for them for a few years and win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true. I was watching these guys, indoor legends, Peter Pappas, Don DeAmber, Patty Morris, and
Right.
then being able to, share the locker room with them as a rookie, a 21 or 22-year-old, kid straight out of college, and those guys welcoming me in like from the start, and being a part of that
Wow.
team, and obviously winning a championship right away was crazy. And people were kidding me. Like after that first year, I played outdoor in Vancouver, won a championship, went indoor to Philly, won a championship, and called me a rabbit's foot or whatever the case may be. And at that time, I was like, this is easy, right? But you never know if you're ever going to get those opportunities again. And I've been really fortunate to get a lot of those opportunities. Being in Baltimore here helps, obviously, but it definitely started my career off on the right foot, and it helped propel a lot of success in the future.
Off the right foot, no pun intended, I'm sure.
Yeah.
2006, the USL Championship with the Whitecaps. 2007, the MISL with the Philadelphia Kicks. 2009, the USL First Division again championship with the Montreal Impact. I think people calling you the Rabbit's Foot would make sense at this point. It's looking pretty.
Yeah, it's carried on for a while, so maybe it was accurate.
It's looking pretty promising. Now, was it after Montreal? I've got notes here. I'm looking through notes. Was it after Montreal that you ended up going to Rochester?
Yeah. So a little bit of a story. I ended
not
up,
yet.
it was in between. So I went from
No. Yeah.
Montreal.
Rochester would have been the next two. Right.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even keep track of all these teams. Sorry. So after Montreal, I ended up signing with the San Jose
Right. Well, I have
Earthquakes.
a chronological list here, but
Yeah, so I signed up with the San Jose Earthquakes.
right. Okay.
After Montreal, was there for a couple months, and then ended up being released and signing with Rochester. So that's when all in 6 month span there. So yeah, I did go to Rochester. That was the next team I played for.
So that was kind of like your second opportunity, second attempt at breaking into Major League Soccer. Was with the San Jose Earthquakes, wasn't it?
It was. So I was in Montreal. Montreal's going to the MLS in 2012, so I finished in 2010. I was, offered to come back there. Then I was offered in San Jose as well. Montreal wasn't guaranteeing me an MLS contract at the time, so I thought it was a right time to go to San Jose. Also, at that time, I was on trial with the team in Denmark, so I went there. They were trying to sign me, but they were merging with a different club, and the paperwork wasn't be able to go through. And January 15th came around, and San Jose's contract was sitting there, and I had talked to the Denmark team, and they said it's going to be another week or two, and I couldn't hold out because I didn't want to lose that MLS contract. So I ended up going to San Jose.
Right.
Didn't work out there again. And so that's when I ended up going back to Rochester. All in this time, it's a funny story here is I was sick for about 2 years straight. I was playing and I was sick, and couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. After games, I was passing out and vomiting, and every doctor I went to said, you're just dehydrated, and just drink more water. So I played the entire Rochester season that year, and after almost every game, I was sick a couple times. I had to go to the hospital.
Goodness.
Yeah, I passed out for a couple minutes. I was unconscious, got IVs. They couldn't figure it out, and so in between Rochester and then the next year, we'll talk about, I'm sure, I went to Charleston Battery. I was close to retirement. I told my agent at the time, like, I don't think I can play anymore unless I figure out what's wrong with me, health-wise. So when I got back to Philadelphia, the former Philadelphia Kicks trainer doctor was the Philadelphia Eagles doctor now, and luckily snuck me into an appointment, and within 5 minutes was able to figure out what was wrong with me. found out I had celiac disease, which at that point never heard of. I couldn't believe. They said, "Oh, you're allergic to wheat and pasta and bread." And I said, "No way. That's all I eat my entire life, growing up Italian household." So they're like, "No, that's what you
Oh
have." And
no.
got tested and was confirmed, a week later that that's what it was. And so I've been gluten free ever since, and made a huge difference in my health and allowed me to
I'll
continue my
bet.
career, which would have been done 12 years earlier. So crazy
That's
time of my life.
well, that's kind of, I mean, that's kind of a mean irony, man. Being an Italian and you can't eat pasta. I mean, something's really messed up right there.
Yeah, I wasn't happy. That was a tough few months to get over to accept that,
No kidding.
for sure. But as the years have passed, gluten-free diet is, everywhere now, and food's
Yeah,
much better than it
absolutely.
was back then.
Yeah, no, I mean back then the gluten-free thing, few people even knew about it. And if
Yep.
you were trying to do something with it, you pretty much had to do it yourself, didn't you? I mean, trying to find packaged food that was gluten-free was almost impossible back then.
It was so hard, and I remember going into the grocery store the first time and buying organic and natural, and everything tasted horribly, and then
Right.
I learned that a lot of stuff was already naturally gluten-free that I didn't know, so I was able to buy some of the,
Well, there's
more
that.
normal foods,
Yeah.
a lot of proteins and rice and stuff like that. So, after a few months, I was able to adjust pretty quickly to it.
So now at this point, you played with the Kicks until 2008. So at this point, you're only playing outdoor soccer. In 2012, you signed with the Charleston Battery for the outdoor season, and you get another championship.
Yeah, so yeah, crazy time. So I was playing indoor outdoor my first few years. When I ended up signing with Montreal, they did year-round
Right.
contracts, so indoor kind of stopped. Um, Once I got start playing USL in Rochester, then ended up in Charleston, indoor came back into my life because, the seasons kind of worked
Right.
out that way that you were able to play both. Ended up signing Charleston there, and everything just kind of clicked right away. We had a really good team. Obviously, able to win the championship that year was really incredible.
That really is incredible. I mean, I when I was reading through your bio, I mentioned this before we came on the air. When I was reading through your bio and I'm looking at, I mean, one of the things that pop out is as you read through this thing, it's like championship. Oh, championship. Oh, wait, championship. Oh, wait a minute. There's another championship, and it's 2012. You just won one with the Charleston Battery, and you're not done with championships yet because now you're going to sign with the Baltimore Blast, and this is in 2012 and with the MISL and another championship.
Yeah, I mean, playing for Philadelphia, knowing the Baltimore Blast, the history, and we had the rivalry
Yeah,
there for
right.
a few years, and right down the road. Like I said, my college coach, Dave McWilliams, played for the Baltimore Blast. I remember coming down here as a kid. We went to Baltimore for the weekend and ended up going to a Blast game when I was 7 or 8 years old. And who would
Wow.
have known, 20 years later that I'd be playing for them. So, uh, again, another dream come true. Obviously, when Philadelphia folded, it hurt, but being able to stay right down the street and play for another historic franchise was awesome, and obviously made a home here now, and it's the best thing that's ever
Sure.
happened to me. So, really happy
But
with
you
that
kept,
decision.
but for a couple of years, you hadn't made the full commitment to indoor soccer yet. You still were going for the next 2 or 3 years. You were still going full year indoors and outdoors. You played in Tampa Bay. Can you tell any stories about the time in Tampa Bay? I mean, this is another culturally
Yeah,
interesting place.
yeah. So there's a lot of indoor. Relationships that ended up happening there. Clay Roberts, the coach of the Tropics, was the GM of the Tampa team. So I had played with him in
Oh
Philadelphia.
wow!
We were teammates. And so
Oh
he called
wow!
me up. Mauricio Salas, who played indoor, Josh Reif, ended up being the coach of Rochester indoor. JT Noon, who played with me in Baltimore for a couple of years, was down there. Andre Budny, who played in Rochester, Syracuse. So there was a lot of indoor players that had come down there. I'm sure Clay was a big part of that.
Yeah,
But a really cool place to be. Obviously, that team only lasted 1 year, but loved living in Tampa and got to golf a lot and enjoyed the warm weather. A little change from Canada and from Philadelphia and Baltimore area. So definitely
so
enjoyed that year
you
as well.
so you originally met Clay Roberts in Philadelphia as teammates.
Yep, in 2006, we were teammates my rookie year. I think for both years that I played in Philly, he was there. We won a championship together, and always stay in touch after that.
It's interesting. I think this comes up in probably every one of my shows. Is if it's not actually mentioned in these words, it becomes apparent in the conversation how small the community is, and how you get to know even players and personalities and principals and people that are involved that you don't actually ever team with. You see frequently, you run into a lot. You have the opportunity to get to know them from a professional level, and it really is a cool community. I mean, especially the indoor game, but it branches off into the outdoor game as well, as you just mentioned here with your time in Tampa Bay, with the outdoor team. Now here's an interesting twist. Here's an interesting twist, because again, you're in Philadelphia area. This is your home. So now you've gone to Vancouver, you've gone to San Jose on the West Coast, Canada, United States. Now you've gone down to Tampa, and now after that you head back up to Canada for your third time and play with the Ottawa Fury. So what was that like?
So the coach at the Ottawa Fury, actually, the head coach was Mark Dos Santos. He had coached me at Montreal Impact. The assistant coach was Martin Nash, who was a teammate of mine in Vancouver, brother of Steve Nash, Canadian and soccer legend. And so, I was in contact with them. They brought me back up there. Just had a really good season. Personally, enjoyed my time back in Canada again. And it was just really cool having those relationships. I had teammates that I had played with before that ended up going there. A guy like Ryan Richter, who was from Philadelphia. We played in Charleston, won a championship there, went up. Nicky Patterson played in Charleston with a championship. We ended up signing there as well. And so to have those relationships and have those players and coaches there was, made an easy decision to go back up into Canada.
Did you ever learn the Canadian French? Did you ever learn how to speak French?
I did not. I was very stubborn. Funny thing is, like in Montreal, most of the people speaking French, but on our team, it was, mostly English, some Italian, and some French. So on the field in practice, almost everything was done in English. So unless I went to the grocery store, I didn't really need to have French. But I was a young, stubborn. I don't need it. I don't want to learn. And I regret it to this day. I wish I picked up a little bit more of the French language. But
right. And so, now you find yourself back in Ottawa. So it's a similar situation in the area.
Right. Yeah. So that was kind of like split French on the one side of the border, and the rest was English. I was on the English side, so Ottawa didn't experience a lot of French there, but
okay.
Montreal definitely was a lot more.
And then here the Harrisburg City Islanders. Not a long time with this team. I guess you only took the field like 3 times with this team, but this was, as far as I can see, this was your last professional outdoor adventure.
Yeah. So after 2014, I was getting older. I kind of realized like my body wouldn't hold up going year-round indoor outdoor. Kind of made the decision that Baltimore and indoor was going to be my future. I had a relationship a little bit with Bill Belcher, the coach up there. They had a few injuries. We're calling down to David Bascom and Danny Kelly. You have any guys? Spoke with me personally. He says Tony available. And so I ended up signing, kind of just for a few games to help him out. I think Danny DePrima. Funny thing is, Danny DePrima was the one who was tore his ACL and as a center midfielder, was a key player for them, and so they kind of wanted me to come in and fill that role for the last few games of the season. So that was something that I did kind of last minute, wasn't planned, but I kind of knew at that point that my outdoor career was probably coming to an end.
Well, I think that sort of takes us through most of the story. But now I think everybody that's watching and anybody that's going to tune into this after the fact, after it's been posted, talking with Tony Donatelli, they want to hear the Baltimore Blast story. So I've saved this for the end. We touched on it earlier. You signed with them in 2012. You guys got that very first year, wasn't it? That very first year with them that you got the MISL championship.
We did,
So
yeah.
talk about that rookie season, not rookie season, but that first season with the Baltimore Blast and how that played out. Drop some names, tell some stories from some games, the championships, the whole
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, so in 2012, I ended up, I had some connections with the Blast, signing here. Played outdoor in Rochester with Max Ferdinand. Patty Morris was playing in
Nice.
Baltimore the year before, and Tom Myers, who I had played with in Philly. And so, they were pushing to me. They were talking with Danny Kelly and Kevin Healy at the time that were interested in signing me. So they were trying to, push me to come here. And I said, if I'm playing indoor, this is where I want to be. So ended up signing with them. It was a big transition year. Sagu had just retired. We didn't have a
Mm.
goalkeeper.
Mm.
William Vanzella and Troy Hernandez were the two, rookies to indoor that they brought in. And
Wow.
no one knew what the Blast were going to be that year. Obviously we had a lot of talented players, Mike Lookingham, Michelle Willwood, Neto, guys that are MVPs and, won championships before, but, the goalie position was a big unknown. And so,
Wow.
coming in, like I just wanted to fit right in, and obviously they found a role for me, and I clicked right from the start. I think I had a hat trick in the first quarter of the first game that I played with them. Slow down after that. I remember one of my friends said, the game's 4 quarters, not just 1 quarter. So yeah. William came in, and after a few games, you knew this was going to be his team for the future. He had such a presence to him. He had the futsal background. He just had to learn the indoor game and the nuances of it.
Right.
Didn't speak a word of English. He
Wow.
just screamed, and nobody knew what the heck he was saying. But he wasn't shy. But I give him a lot of credit. He picked up the language really quickly. He dedicated himself to that. He learned the game. He was a student of the game, and obviously, by the end of the season, was already one of the best goalies in the league. And we had the players in front of him that could get it done, and everything just clicked. And able to win the championship that first year was a little bit of unexpected, I would say, probably going into it. But if you look back on the team that we have, it's like, how did we? Of course, we were going to win the championship with the players that we had.
Right.
But some of us were just coming back to the indoor game.
So now the next season, if I've got my calendar correct, the next season was the last season of the MISL, and I think that plays out because the following season, the first season of the MASL, Baltimore goes to the championship and loses to Monterey in the first MASL championship. But I want to go back to because my history is a little sketchy on that 2013-2014 season. Did Baltimore go to the championship and just not win?
Yeah, that's correct. So I want to say it was 9 straight years that the Blast went to the finals between 2011 and 2018, something like that. So 2012 we won. The 13-14 season we lost to, I don't know if it was Kansas City or Missouri Comets at the time.
Right. It was a Comets
in the finals.
Right.
Crazy game. I remember we were winning with like 2 minutes to go in the mini game, and they scored with 2 minutes to tie it, and then with a minute left to win it. So we were that close to another championship. I mean, as you go through, I mean, every year we were pretty close, whether we won or lost. It was on like a last second goal or mini game or overtime of a mini game. And so you learn pretty quickly when you're with the Blast, you're going to have an opportunity to compete for a championship. And as a player, that's all you can really ask for. And so we were really, fortunate and really worked hard to give ourselves those opportunities over a 7-year span. Last year, we were able to get back to it and not get over the hump, but hopefully we can get back there again this year.
Exactly. Of course. I mean, like you say, so many years the Blast are, especially during that period of time. I mean, perennial appearances all the way through for championship quality, soccer all the way through. When the MASL started, I'm gonna bring up a subject that I think is kind of comical, but you would have more of a personal input on it than I, and that is the multi-point system. The multi-goal, the MPS, the multi-point system, and because you were playing that in the MISL, and then it also carried over for the Eastern Division in the first year of the MASL, where the multi-point system was still around that first year. Did that cause any confusion at all? I mean, as a player, was that something that is just an easy thing you just move into?
Yeah, I don't think it was that hard of a transition. I think, growing up playing soccer, it's 1 point goals. And so getting back into that was, normal for us. The multi-point system was a fun thing. It was the fans, I'm sure, enjoyed it. It seemed like a higher scoring, having the 3 points, you're never out of it necessarily, hitting shots from deeper. So it was fun. It was a cool experience, but I don't think it made any impact on the way you approach the game or coming back into a 1 point system.
So when you went down to Monterrey for that first MASL championship, had you played in Mexico prior to that? Indoor soccer?
Indoor. I'm trying. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think I. Yeah, no, I did. I think I played one game with the Philadelphia Kicks down in Monterrey, and I guess that was 2007, 2008 season. So I think I did experience that one time prior to playing with the Blast down there. Yeah.
It's I mean I've traveled all through Mexico, and for me it seems like it would be a bit more of a culture shock coming from the United States to Mexico than coming from Mexico to the United States. Now I don't really have the quality. I'm not qualified to say that because of course I'm not Mexican, but so I don't really know what kind of a culture shock they go through, but it is a different culture. And if you're not familiar with it, I mean, now at this point in my life, because I grew up so close to the Mexican border and I've been to Mexico so many times, I know what to expect before I go south. But I know how things are different, and I appreciate it, and I love it, and it's fun. I mean, it doesn't take me much more than an hour to know that I've gone somewhere, because I mean, you cross that international border and everything's different, But for somebody that's from the East Coast that may not have traveled there, especially an entire team that is coming from the East Coast to travel down into Mexico to compete for a championship, for crying out loud. I mean, that seems like something that might make an issue. But and Monterrey won that first MASL title.
Yes. No, yeah. So it was a really cool experience. I had some experience being in Mexico playing outdoor. We played some Champions League games there where 50,000 people throwing bottles, and it's a culture shock for sure. Obviously, the language is hard. You're trying to order food. It's it's difficult, but with the teams that we have, you have a lot of Brazilians and a lot of players that speak the Spanish language, some Mexicans on our team. So it wasn't too difficult. The biggest thing was, like you said, the religion. It's a religion. This sport down there, they have such a passion for the game. Playing down in Monterrey, the smaller field at that time before we came to Towson here. But just they're right on top of you. It was hot. It was loud. And it was such an exciting game. I think we ended up scoring with 1 second left in one of the mini games, and going to overtime and losing in the overtime. But, back and forth and chaotic, and you're drenched in sweat, you're dehydrated, but, a really cool experience. And something that we learned from and was able to take, moving forward, playing, 4 more times in Mexico in the finals. So.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's looking from the outside looking in. That's what it appeared from my perspective. It's like, okay, they went down there, they looked, they saw, they checked it out, and then they figured out the system. And now we're going to go down there and reverse the result, and come back with a different result, but not just once. We're going to do it 3 times in a row, and but the thing that's interesting is, although that statement on my part may or may not be entirely true, it was never a dominated situation. I mean, in all 3 of those championships, although you guys came through with those trophies, it was never a domination. I mean, you guys, it was a battle royal for 4 years in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the DNA of the Baltimore Blast. It's never easy. Every game is a 1-goal game, overtime, whatever it is. We just, try to fight to the end, give ourselves a chance to win. I remember, I don't know what year it was. It may have been the first one. We played Syracuse in the quarterfinals. We played a triple overtime game at home that we were able to win. We went to who was next? I think Milwaukee. We scored in an overtime there. We went to Sonora, went into a mini game, into overtime, went 14-13 shootout that we were able to score. And then the following year, we went into a mini game. And then, it's 10 seconds left. Adriano scores a goal to tie it up. I mean, it was just wild. Every game was just something different. But it battle tested us. It prepared us for the following season. And I mean, at this point, some of us have seen everything in this game. I don't know if we can see anything new. And that really makes a difference when you get into the playoffs. You can see it in every sport. When you have players that are new to it, the playoff is a different beast. And being able to have all those experiences and, get through it and having those championships gives you the confidence the next time that you guys are going to get it done again.
What can you say about the different style of play that you get from the Mexican teams?
Yeah, every player they're technical. They have a good first touch. They can shoot with both feet. They're quick. It's a different game. I think a lot of the American teams and players are smart. They know the indoor game. They're physical, can play the game, know the game. But there's no weak links on those Mexican teams technically. I mean, their defenders can shoot just as well as their forwards. Their goalies are comfortable with the ball. It's just a very technical game, and they're quick, and they make it very difficult to play against.
And they've shown that whether it was Sonora or Monterrey, there for a while, it was one or the other of those two teams that was coming out of the West. And it was, one of those two teams that was going into the finals all the way. Well, I mean, all the way up to and including last year, but even going back to the last full season prior to the COVID interruption, when it was a single elimination setup, and Monterrey went to Milwaukee to play the way for the finals. Mm-hmm. And I went to that game, and I was expecting a closer game. The Milwaukee Wave really held their own on their home court. And really, I mean, after maybe halfway through the second quarter, it became pretty obvious that the flow of the game was really going in favor of the Milwaukee Wave at that point. I'm not sure I was a big fan favorite of the single elimination setup. I'm kind of one of those guys that would like to go the other direction and get an actual best of three, for the playoffs. Instead of having the mini game, I'd kind of like to go the other direction and see that happen. I mean, I get all the reasons why we can't do that yet. The financial reasons or travel or any, all of that. I get it. But I wasn't sure that I was a big fan of the single elimination thing, mainly because my take has always been, once you get that far and once you've earned a playoff spot, you ought to be able to have a home field game. At some point, you ought to be able to have a home field game, in some way or another. But then the COVID thing happened. So we play a full season, almost a full season. And, the standings are looking like we know who's going into the playoffs. We know who the top teams are. Everybody's starting to look at that playoff season, and then done, just done. How did that affect you guys on your team and you personally?
No, it was obviously really, really tough. I mean, you prepare so hard, you work all season to get to a certain point, and then something like that is out of everyone's control happens, and you're heartbroken. But then your mind goes to the health of your family and the people around you and around the country. So, I mean, it was tough to swallow, but we understood. There was bigger things that needed to be dealt with at that time. So, then having the following season of Blast not play was really tough, and trying to see when's normal going to return, and are we going to play again, and especially for me as I'm getting older, how many more opportunities or seasons are going to be left, and so it was a lot of unknown, uncertainty, but obviously we're super happy to be back playing, and been able to compete the last couple seasons.
So, last season it was interesting because again, this is just, from the fans' perspective, someone might be able to argue that a somewhat educated fan's perspective, but I'm just a fan. I know the sport, I know the game, I've followed it for years, but it looked to me at the beginning of last season that at the beginning, say the first half, that the teams that did not participate the season before were slow getting off. They weren't firing on all cylinders out the gate for the first 4 to 5 games, and it just it looked like, maybe that year off had some effect on the team chemistry, or some kind of effect on how the emotional state of the team was, individually and team wise. But Baltimore started firing, and the other ones never really did. I mean, the other teams that didn't play never really did. I mean, I guess Milwaukee started to look good at the end also, but Baltimore started firing on all cylinders and earning their spot going through again. It's the Baltimore Blast. I mean, I mean, you've got that team, and that's who these guys are, and they're going to show up again, and you did, and you showed up again, and I've got to say it was hugely disappointing, and you can speak to it if you want to, but I'll only open the door in case you care to. But it was hugely disappointing that that you guys didn't get a home game.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty safe to say everybody was disappointed in that. As players, completely out of our control, and we just had the mindset that we have the experience, we have the capability of playing and beating anyone anywhere. We approached that, in Milwaukee. We knew we were going to have to win a road game no matter what. So whether it was 2 or 1, didn't really change much. Obviously, we would have loved to play in front of our fans and and our families, but we took that underdog mentality that nobody really gave us a chance. For the past few years, we hear chirping that the Blast only win because they play on a small field, or the Blast are too old, and they're too slow, or whatever the case may be. And it just adds fuel to the fire, motivates us, and that never puts any doubts in our minds. We know what we're capable of. We've won championships on big fields before we moved to Towson. We've won championships in Mexico, and we have that confidence and that belief that when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, that we're going to come through. And with the players that we have, it's always someone new stepping up, and especially in the big moments. And to knock off Milwaukee, who was a really strong team this year, we thought it was going to be tough, and to take care of them in 2 games was huge. I thought we had the first game down in Chihuahua. We really weren't playing great, but we were capitalizing on chances, and we were in a good position. We couldn't close the deal. And the second game, I thought we came out firing, and we were really strong in the first half. We just couldn't finish our chances, and going in the halftime down 2-1, and then the game got away from us a little bit. But we always had the belief that we were capable of playing on any field and winning, and even down in Mexico, where it's so hard to play and where the fans are on top of you, and we still had that belief that we would get the job done, even losing the first game. So that's part of being a Baltimore Blast player, and being here for so long is that what we're capable of, what is expected of us, and you never lose that faith.
How you talk a little bit, emphasize a little bit more about, you say that the fans are on top of you. I mean, I know that venue only holds like 2,500 people, and that every seat is full, and that they're literally right on top of I mean, I haven't been there, but I mean, just by looking at it, the seats are right on the field, and then they're built right up on the side there, so everybody's just literally right on top of you. And exactly. I guess it's like a sound. The structure itself actually reverberates noise as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's such a hard place to play. I mean, one, like you said, like the stands go straight up, so even the top row, they're like right on top of the field. They're loud, they're passionate. It's small, it's hot. You're at elevation, so you got to get used to the change in elevation and the breathing. And the games are always up and down. It's not like a slow, calm game at just playing possession. It's a lot of chances back and forth, high pressure, and so it's chaotic at times, and it's crazy at times, and exciting, but a really tough place to play, but somewhere that we've had experience playing before, and we thought we would get over the hump this year, but it didn't work out for
us. Tony, can I ask you, how much longer do you expect to be playing, my friend?
It's a good question. I've been asked that a lot years from my wife, from from the
Okay.
blast, from family, from friends. Not much more. I mean, after that game in Chihuahua, I thought I was done playing. I lost the emotions ran out of me. You can ask the players or people that were there. I broke down because I thought that was the last game of my career. I thought, going out, I thought we were going to win the championship and I'd walk off into the sunset, and it didn't work out that way. And as the time passed after the season, it stays with you. And obviously the blast wanting me to be back, my wife and family, and I want to say this is the last year. I don't know if this is going to be the last year, but I don't think.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where nobody ever wants to see the superstar go away, but I mean, athletics are athletics. And, I mean, you guys go into it knowing that the career period is a limited period of time in your lifetime. I mean, you're going to be doing it from the time you're 20 to maybe 40, maybe 41, 42. If you're really healthy and you're good and you take care of yourself, you avoid injuries, maybe you can keep going to the top level that long. But it's been a blessing to be able to follow your career, and at least the indoor part of the career. The MASL seems to be doing okay. I mean, a lot of people are naysayers. They're saying that it doesn't have enough teams, and of course, my argument to that is you want strong ownership groups before you bring in a whole bunch of teams that come and go. I was disappointed to learn that the Guadalajara team's not going to be able to take part this season. They had announced that they were going to play this season, so we're not bringing in any new teams, and we only lost the Tropics. And as you well know, this is a game where attrition seems to be something that happens sometimes in huge bunches along the way. And only losing the one team is I see as a somewhat positive move. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple more things. One question is, you mentioned the field size. I would be remiss if I didn't ask Tony Donatelli about his take on the different sizes of the fields, being that you guys play on a smaller field and catch grief for it from around the fan base. Talk to me about, from the player's perspective, what it's like having that small field. Do you feel you have an advantage, or just talk about that?
Sure. Personally, I love the bigger field. You have more space. The game is a slower pace. It's big. I think when we first moved to CQ Arena, we had a big home field advantage. I mean, I think teams had to adjust to it. The first year, I think we went undefeated at home. But as you see, in Chihuahua, it's a smaller field. More teams are getting as we go along. Teams are used to playing at our field. It's an entertaining game. It's fast paced. Can't get off the ball. To play on it, things happen quickly. You have to be, intelligent player to survive. You can expose, and so it really makes the game more enjoyable, I think, on the fans, especially that are coming into the indoor game. They see a lot of action, and so I don't think there's much of an advantage anymore. Like I said before, we've won on big fields, we've won on small fields. Other teams have come into our field now and beaten us. We've won, so I don't know if it's an advantage anymore. But it's something that we've accepted, embraced, and have had success with. So,
yeah, I mean, it is an interesting controversy. It seems to be somewhat controversial, in some circles more than others, but there are some that actually, just seriously think it's the best way to go. I was talking to Soccer Sam, and he loves it. He likes the smaller field. One of his points I thought was really interesting, and I had not thought about it, was that basketball court-sized venues are more available than hockey-sized venues. And so being able to put together a smaller field on something that was initially built for basketball, in a venue that was initially built to house a basketball team, being able to put as big a field as you possibly can inside that arena. I noticed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I noticed that where you guys play, the bleachers on one side are completely pushed in order to make room for the field. Is that correct?
That is right. Yeah. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do it on the one side on one side.
Right. So that kind of adjustment capability may make it more available for ownerships in other cities to come out and eventually be a part of the game. On the other hand, there's those people, as you know, there's those people that believe that it should be a uniform size, court everywhere you play, a uniform size field everywhere everybody plays, so again, from a marketing standpoint, so that the product is the same, not so much because of an advantage or disadvantage but so that when a sports broadcaster or a new fan goes to Ontario and watches the game, and then he goes to Dallas to watch the game, and then he goes to Baltimore to watch the game, that the basic sport is the same everywhere he goes. And that there, from a marketing standpoint, that there's some advantage to that. I kind of lean towards a home field advantage idea. I mean, I kind of remember a game that was an outdoor game. It was a World Cup qualifying match. It was years ago, where the United States national team played in Trinidad. I think it was in Trinidad, and it was on a field of dirt and rocks. And there was no grass on the field at all. It was a field of dirt and rocks. And the Trinidad national team, fielding the complaints, came back and said, "Hey, home field advantage, man. This is our, come to our court and play the game where we play." So there's a little bit of that, but
yeah, I think in an ideal world, size and the dimensions. I don't think it's realistic with what the league's working with the ownership, and what the cities are working with. There's not much. Sam said, there's a lot more in the smaller arenas with basketball courts that are for our organizations, and so that's kind of the way it's going to have to go. Like I said, we've all grown up playing on bad grass fields, or in the streets or futsal. So there's no excuse once you get on the field. It's soccer, and both teams have to play on the same conditions, and whoever executes on that day is going to win. So that's kind of the approach that we have.
Tony Donatelli, Baltimore Blast midfielder, thank you so much for giving me your time today. This has been fun. I really enjoyed going through this with you, man. I'll make sure to get your attention the next time I'm in the same venue as you are. Maybe just to shake your hand and say hello. But thank you for your time today, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It was fun, and look forward to watching more of these.
All right. You have a good day.